one more final time in the AFC West. Guys, if this is your first time checking out our new video series, we have already posted the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Broncos. So finishing out the division, Brian, this time we're talking about the Las Vegas Raiders. 2024, they were not a very good team. So today we're going to talk about what they've done since the end of that season and going into this year. What do you think about the Raiders?
Well, it's funny. So I've definitely got my gray and black attire on. So, I found myself, obviously, I've been a Georgia fan. If you follow along with the podcast, you know I'm a huge Georgia fan. Therefore, you know I'm a Brock Bowers fan. And now I have found myself becoming a Raiders fan because of, their fan base is cool. They're unique characters. It's weird not seeing them in California anymore. And I still have a hard time saying they're the Las Vegas Raiders. But be that it as it may, yeah, they were terrible last year. They did not have a good time. They had a 4-13 record, and it was just ugly. But I mean, they lost their number one quarterback early on. So I think they lost their QB2 about mid-season for a little while. They had some struggles at the quarterback spot, and for Brock Bowers to put up the kind of numbers that he did with that struggle is super impressive. So with them getting Geno Smith coming in, I think you're going to see the tables turn on this Las Vegas Raiders team dramatically. Getting into it, what departures and signings and all that fun stuff. I know I talked about one of them, but we'll start with the departures.
Well, I mean, you see the Julio Jones autograph behind me. I see the Todd Gurley autographed helmet behind you. We're Falcons fans. We know what it looks like to have Desmond Ridder trying to run your offense, and it's not great. And he was their third option. So we had him as a first option for a season, and that was not fantastic. But kind of like what you said, this team being 4-13, the seller team in their division, it was one of those things where they lost Gardner Minshew, they lost Aiden O'Connell. It got to a point where they were having to play Desmond Ridder, and I think their big departures are any quarterback that played games last year that aren't playing games for them this year. I think that's addition by subtraction, if you ask me. But they did lose some talent. Trayvon Merrick is a safety that I really liked coming out of college. He is off to the Carolina Panthers. Kaylavon Chason is off to New England. He's an edge rusher, very talented, coming out of LSU. A very high ceiling player. And I'm not even sure if he's really reached that ceiling yet. But we'll see what they can get out of him in New England. And then a personal favorite of mine is a linebacker named Divine Diablo, who is now coming to play for my Atlanta Falcons this year. I'm excited to see what he can contribute to our front seven and the other additions that we've made. But you've already said the big acquisition for them this year kind of came as a surprise. I know Sam Darnold was the marquee quarterback on the market this year. And I predicted back when we were doing free agency predictions, I thought that Vegas was going to be the team to go out and splurge and bring in Sam Darnold. Instead, they kind of went a different direction. They brought in a name very familiar to their new head coach, and they traded for Geno Smith from Seattle. And then we saw Seattle turn and then sign Sam Darnold. So I was kind of right in a way, just in a roundabout way. But trading for Geno Smith, it's transformative, for lack of better term. I think it allows them to do so much more. Obviously, this is a new coaching staff that's coming in. You've got Pete Carroll that's running the team now. Obviously, Tom Brady being a partial owner, he's had a lot of say and influence in what they do. So the way that he's going to now run the Chip Kelly offense and some of their other additions that we're going to talk about, it certainly makes for higher spirits for this Las Vegas team. It's very easy to go 4-13 when you're playing the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Chiefs, and the way that they're constructed. So as I alluded to in a previous video, I think the Chiefs have put a pressure on the Raiders to basically say, this is what we are. This is the level of big boy football that we're playing at, and you got to grow up and catch up. And this offseason has been about trying to catch up to the other teams in their division. Jeremy Chin coming over from the Commanders, I think, is a very good safety. Obviously, losing Merrick, they had to bring in another back end player that can make plays the same way. And Chin has been a very good safety for a while now. Offensive guard Alex Kappa was a it was a standout player in the league on his rookie contract. Went over to Cincinnati to try to fix that offensive line a couple of years ago. Now joins this team. I think that's going to improve the protection up front for Geno Smith in this offense. And then Raheem Mostert, which has been a very productive running back, a little bit brittle on the injury front. He comes over from a Miami team. Definitely has his best years behind him, but he is still an explosive player. He is a veteran presence that I think can help a player that we will talk about in the very near future in their starting running back that they secured in the draft. And then you look at who they brought in as far as re-signing. You had Malcolm Kuntz as a defensive end, and then defensive tackle Adam Butler. Obviously, this defense lives and dies by the contributions of Max Crosby, but bringing in a Jeremy Chin and then also making sure that you've got Butler and Kuntz back, it's giving them a defensive front that can plug running holes. It can, put pressure on quarterbacks, and there are some very good quarterbacks in this division, as we've talked about. And so, what does that do for their team as they continue to try to keep up with some of these high-powered offenses within the division? I'm just kind of curious what you think at this point. Have they done enough to ascend within the division? Do you think there's a chance that they're not the fourth team finisher in this division going into 2025?
I actually think they're gonna like flip dramatically. I think they're actually going to finish fairly high. Again, it's a tough division. I understand that, but not every game you play in the NFL is a division opponent. So I actually think they're going to do very well this year. I think bringing in Geno, you're going to see a resurgence in his career. Um, he's not an old quarterback, but he is a veteran quarterback, and I think that's what this team needs. So I think they've done a good job of basically rebuilding this. Pete Carroll, I can't say enough about this guy. He is an outstanding coach. He's familiar to Geno. They should be on the same page from day one. So I think you're going to see good things come out of Las Vegas, and it's going to help their young star in Brock Bowers. You're going to see his numbers just go crazy, and I don't see him having that sophomore slump, especially out of that tight end spot. And you and I talked about it before we got on. You have another outstanding tight end that's a blocking tight end with Michael Myers. I think that, or Mayers, I'm sorry.
Mayor,
It
yeah.
got on a Halloween kick there for a minute. Anyway,
That was a scary mistake to make.
all right. So, but I do think you've got two excellent tight ends there. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do and how they play that out. Moving forward, with their drafts, how do you think they did in the drafts with their pickups?
Oh, I mean, I think they killed the draft. I think they kind of a funny story going into the draft. There was an executive within that front office, and I won't say who it is. You can go and look it up if you're interested in it. But basically, had a teenage son that said he was going to move out of the house if they didn't take Ashton Genty in the first round. And so they made that selection 6 overall. They brought in Ashton Genty, running back from Boise State. That selection is keeping families together. It's going to feed households for a long time. Genty was just a beast like no other last year. You look at yards before contact, yards after contact, yards per rush. I mean, this is somebody that was challenging some of the all-time records of college football. The season that he had last year was absolutely just diabolically insane, and he is a difference-making player. You cannot understate what it's going to look like having Ashton Genty in the backfield with Geno Smith compared to what they had last year, where it was Alexander Madison and Zamir White and just running backs that just were never going to move the needle on this team no matter what else you did. This is a definitely different looking Oakland Raiders offensive personnel group, and that carried over into the second round as well. So obviously Brock Bowers is the number one target. I'm a big fan of Jacoby Myers. I think he's probably one of the more underrated wide receivers in the league, but they finally get him a good running mate. Trey Tucker is just fine. I'm not saying anything bad about him, but bringing in a Jack Besh from TCU, another boundary corner that can learn and grow in this offense. I was even planning on talking about Deontay Thornton, but just a size speed freak coming out of Tennessee. They are building this offense up. And then maybe one of their most underrated draft picks. This was somebody that I had going in the second round of my mock draft, but Darian Porter in the fourth round. He's a corner from Iowa State. He is somebody that could, in 2 years, be the top corner on that team, and I wouldn't be surprised. Don't let that fourth round pick fool you. He is a very, very good corner, and I think he could do great things as they continue to build up that defense and play the Pete Carroll style of football. He's known for having big, lanky corners. He'll put them on an island. He's, off man, press man. Pete Carroll's not afraid to mix it up in coverages. You saw what he did in Seattle with the Legion of Boom when Dan Quinn was his defensive coordinator. The Raiders are an ascending team. That being said, I do have them finishing fourth in the division again. I know you and I might differ on that, but at a respectable 9-8 record, a huge uptick from that 4-13 record. This is still a very tough division. They've got to play each of those teams a total of 6 times between the other 3. I think that they're gonna hang with the big brothers in that division. I just don't think that they're quite ready yet in Pete Carroll's first year, in Chip Kelly's first year back in the NFL. I don't know that they have been able to do enough just in this one offseason to really compete with the more established powers that be within the division. But I do think they're going to be a lot more competitive than what they were before. And we started with this division. I can't stress how rare it is for all 4 teams in a division to have a winning record, but that's exactly what we've predicted over the course of this week's videos. 9-8 and finishing fourth would be incredible for the AFC West. But where do you have them finishing record-wise?
Before I give my prediction, I do want to go back to the Mayer and Ashton Genty real quick, and that's why I think you'll see him be a force because he is that blocking tight end. How many holes is he going to open up for Genty, and how spectacular is that going to look? And that's why I do think they're going to surpass not just the what I have as the number 4 team, and I think they surpassed the number 3 team. And I think they give Kansas City a run for their money, even with it being the first year. It may be the first year Pete Carroll's been there. It's not his first year in the NFL. So I actually think they finish way better than you do. I think they end up with somewhere around probably 13, 14 wins. And I think they're actually competing with Kansas City with the weapons that they brought in. And I said it in the last video with Bo Nix. I really think he's going to have a sophomore slump at Denver, letting them be the number 4 team. So I think they easily slide above Denver and that offense. I just don't know that it's going to click like you saw last year. So, like I said, I think they end up with 13, 14 wins. I think it's going to be an impressive year for Raiders fans. So we'll have to see on that one. What do you think their strengths and weaknesses are?
I think their biggest strength is kind of what I've already alluded to. It's the big upgrades that they've seen on offense. Not only going from Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell and certainly Desmond Ridder to Geno Smith. And I think at this point we're all praying that Geno stays healthy because we don't want to see any other quarterback helming this offense. Looking at the running backs that they had last year, now going to Ashton Genty, being able to run some 2 tight end sets with Bowers and Mayer both in there, I think can open them up a lot more. And then, of course, the mastermind behind it all is going to be Chip Kelly, fresh off a national championship win running the Ohio State offense last year. It should make Raiders fans very excited about a dynamic, productive offense. And I think that's going to be their big strength because if you look at what my biggest concern from them is they lost players from every position group this offseason. That roster is very much in flux, even I think at a higher than usual rate when you look at regime changes. They lost a lot of players. I mean, like I said, you can go and look at defensive line, linebackers. cornerbacks, safety, like the secondary, offensive linemen, running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers. There is not a position group that didn't see a departure from this team. And so I think you can only change so much in an offseason and expect consistency. And we know in the NFL that consistency can be so deadly. And so I think that this roster has so much turnover that I think that they are going to surprise people with how good they are. But I don't know that they're ready to be that upper echelon team. And that's why I have that record showing that if they can be a middle of the pack team, that's still a stark improvement from the brand of football that they played last year. They've got a very unique fusion between productive veterans when you look at a Geno Smith and some of their pieces on defense, like the Jeremy Chin, the Raheem Mostert, stuff like that. But then also the bright young talent that they've brought in. When you think about the Ashton Genties and the Brock Bowers of the world, it's going to be a cool team to watch. I think they're going to surprise some people. I just don't know that they're ready to be that upper echelon team just yet.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Like we do on every video, what fantasy football? What do you take anybody off this team? I mean, obviously you got to take
Brock Bowers. Next question.
But other than Brock Bowers, I mean, that's
Ashton Genty. Next question. Yeah, I mean, I recently did a new startup draft for a new dynasty team, and I ended up with the 3rd pick and the 6th pick. And I think I told you a little bit about this before. The first 2 picks off the board were receivers. So I took a receiver 3rd because I had that 6th pick. I view a top 3 running back position this year between Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, and I think Ashton Genty joins them. And so I was guaranteeing myself one of those 3 running backs. Ashton Genty was the first running back taken of that group. He ended up being the 4th pick right after I took Malik Neighbors. It is just a sign of how young he is and how productive people think he's going to be right off the bat. Ashton Genty could be a first-round pick in all formats this year, and I think he's going to return dividends on it, assuming he stays healthy. He is going to be a do-it-all running back at a time where there aren't a lot of do-it-all running backs. The league has shifted to a committee approach. They do not like to give one guy a true workload, and this is somebody that could have between 300 and 400 touches this season. Straight hit the ground running, pardon the pun, for Ashton Genty as a rookie, and I think he can handle it and do great things with it. So Bowers and Genty leading the way. Geno Smith, I don't think is going to make moves as far as a fantasy thing. Obviously, if you're in a 2-quarterback league, he's somebody that can be a quarterback 2, quarterback 3 based on how you roster construct. But Genty and Bowers by far and away. Jacoby Myers as a bench receiver can come in and give you some good weeks when bye weeks and injuries start piling up and catching you midseason. But for my personal taste, you're going to have to use a high pick on either one of them. But I think that it's worth it to be able to look at your roster at the end of the draft. If you see Ashton Genty or Brock Bowers, you feel pretty good about those and where you took them.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to be – those 2 obviously are the standout. I had Geno Smith on my roster last year. He's an okay middle-of-the-road quarterback. Is he going to put up a ton of points? No, probably not. Does he have potential to? Yes, absolutely. And I think – seeing him with a Brock Bowers combination, and even an Ashton Genty, throwing it to him out of the backfield, he has potential there to be a higher pace point quarterback. So I don't know that I would count him out completely, but I'm like you, if you can pick him up, middle of the pack, you're okay. You're not going to get hurt with using Geno Smith. I just don't know that he's going to be, that outstanding Lamar Jackson crazy points, type quarterback. So,
but if he gives you similar production to what Sam Darnold gave you last year in Minnesota, he can be the engine that makes the offense run. He is going to be that point guard that facilitates the other pieces around him. He's going to be the reason. So Geno Smith not being a fantasy superstar on his own, he's going to be the reason why Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty are the fantasy superstars that you want. Because if you look at that offense being able to stay on the field, having sustained drives, having more chances to score touchdowns, is just going to make both of those guys even better because he's going to keep that offense running, keep them on the field more. And obviously, that's just more chances for points that you wouldn't have had with lesser quarterback play.
Absolutely. And I think, Pete Carroll's probably not looking at fantasy football, but going back to your field general being that point guard, I think that's why he brought Geno Smith in, because them two have a connection together. He trusts Geno, and I think you're gonna see that chemistry pay off, like you said, with these young guys that are very much going to score you a lot of points. I think he controls that, and I do see him being a decent pickup in a fantasy. Again, you're not going to get hurt by taking him for sure.
Yeah, especially not at the price that you would pay to get him compared to where you would have to draft a Jaden Daniels or a Lamar Jackson.
Yep.
You can build your team up by using those early round picks on other positions and trying to get advantages that way, and then using Geno Smith as that steady force at quarterback position. I do think he'll be consistent, just not wowing. But one other note, not really from a fantasy standpoint, but just from the team standpoint, we've talked a lot throughout this video about the connection, the familiarity between Geno Smith and head coach Pete Carroll. I actually read this offseason that Geno Smith was not a Pete Carroll decision. It was actually a Tom Brady decision. Brady is apparently making the majority of the shots in how that team is constructed these days. And he was the one that told them, go get Geno Smith from Seattle, as opposed to signing Sam Darnold. He wanted Geno, and it just made too much sense for them having Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly's offense. That was a Brady call. So it's kind of one of those things that in Brady I trust. And if he says Geno Smith is who we need to run this offense, then I think we should all have faith that that's going to be a good move in 2025 and beyond.
Interesting side note. Guys, that's going to do it for the AFC West. I hope you've enjoyed this small series. We've got the NFC West coming up. Looking forward to making that video. We are going to go back and forth between the two conferences. So, we don't want to show one conference more love than the other. So we will get through all 32 teams. We hope you enjoy it. Again, I want to give a shout out to our lads. That's where we're getting our depth charts. They do a good job of putting that together very early. They're pretty quick and fairly accurate. So I want to give them a little shout out as well, show them a little love. But again, I'm Brian. We have Brad. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next series.